What is the point of farming without making an impact far and wide? Farming is underpaid, thankless hard work in the elements, but we can't help ourselves. What a ridiculous way to make a living. We're all just a bit mental. Well, this week we found one of our own making a big impact on how small farms work and scale, not only in his home state of Arkansas, but on farms all across America. This week, Sean Pessarra, the mindful farmer, beekeeper, farm grower, tool inventor, thought leader, and so much more, joins co-host Karl Binger of Paris Natural Farms and me, Nick Burton, at the Bootstrap Farmer Studio for farmers in studio smoking cigars. Let's get to it. So today was all about soil blocking for us. We did a lot of soil blocking work, and people will see that at some point whenever we get it out. But you and I had breakfast one time, very short. I feel like you're one of the people that's come on here that I don't know extremely well. So I thought before we got to the soil blocking stuff that we would invite Karl over and we'd all just kick it out and talk farmer stuff for a little bit. So welcome to everything.
Yeah, it's been awesome to be here. See behind the scenes what Bootstrap's doing and hanging with you guys has been great.
First trip to the warehouse, that's always eye-opening for folks.
Man. Yeah. Scale at the next level. Like I couldn't wrap my mind around how much you guys are doing.
Yeah, I feel like it's Groundhog's Day. Every time I go there, I ask Leo, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, we're adding on. I'm like, you told me that last time I was here. He's like, I know, we're adding on again.
Right. And it's not enough. Like the add-on it's not near what it needs to be at this point, but what are you going to do?
That is a good thing.
Right. So we need to you have a pretty extensive history of farming along. I'm not going to call it an internship. I'm not going to call it that you work there, but I know that you're at a place for quite some time at quite the scale. That's about all I know. So we're really getting to know each other on this. So let's start with the very basics. From Houston originally, moved up to Conway, Arkansas. So we met through Jill.
Yep.
And I need to know your farming background.
Yeah. So my background actually started in ecology. So I've been passionate about the outdoors since I was a little kid and wanted to be a scientist, a biologist since I was a little kid. And so went to school, did environmental science, got my master's in environmental science, worked as a field ecologist for about 5 years or so, and loved it. I loved everything I did that was outdoors. A lot of what I did was helping big companies or oil and gas companies get permits to fill in wetlands.
I guess this was in Houston?
Yeah, this is in the Houston area.
And that's where you went to college too?
I went to college in East Texas, Stephen F. Austin.
Oh, all right.
That's where my wife is, Axum Jacks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Woo. And yeah, so I enjoyed what I did, but it wasn't where my heart was. Like that wasn't what I signed up to do. So wrapping up grad school, I started gardening in the backyard. This would have been almost 15 years ago now, and just small little plot. Just got started, and it was like this. The bug bit me.
The gateway.
And yeah, it was a gateway drug for sure. Got chickens, got quail. We raised quail in a garage. We had catfish in a barrel, and our whole house was under 500 square feet. In the backyard was maybe another 1,000 square feet.
500 square feet?
Yeah, it was 2 rooms basically.
Wow.
And we were in the parking lot of our church. Like the church we went to wrapped around the house, and then across the street was my office. So it was like we lived in a fishbowl of all of our friends, like looking at what we were doing, and we turned that whole space into just a massive garden over the course of the 3 years or 2.5 years we were in that house. And yeah, the bug just bit me, and I got really into sustainable agriculture and the idea that we could use agriculture to heal the land, which was still in the vein of what I wanted to do with ecology, but just another route. And so that was just really eye-opening to me. And my wife was also studying nutrition at the same time, studying holistic nutrition. And it was like we were seeing how our paths were converging of like people get healthy, the land gets healthy when we farm in a more regenerative way.
And how old are you going through here? Like, where are you at after this is?
I guess it would have been like 22.
All right.
Karl.
Yeah, so we'd just gotten married, wanting to kind of change my direction, but there just were not jobs in sustainable agriculture.
Yeah.
Applied for everything I could find, and you needed 10 years of experience. And all this stuff. So I kept doing the environmental science route, working as a consultant. And all the while, just any free time I had, I would just find farms to go work for. Found a guy who did sheep and pigs out on pasture, and learned from him, learned from some gardeners, and then I started beekeeping. I watched 2 YouTube videos and then started my beekeeping company and started cutting bees out of people's houses on the side of doing the environmental consulting. And so at one point we had 30 beehives on top of our roof, like in the middle of Houston. We had like a flat garage section and a flat addition. So we had hives up on there, and then we moved them out to the country. Eventually we got up to about 100 hives, just on the side. And then
All the while living in this 500 square foot house?
this would have been when we moved to Houston. This was a bigger house.
All right.
So there was a transition kind of in there, but we're like in the city.
So like
just
which
surrounded by
loop
people.
are you in Houston? I mean, are you like...
We were right on the 610 loop.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, we were in there.
Yeah, you're in the thick of it.
Yep.
Wow.
We got some bees on top of some restaurants in the downtown area, kind of before it was cool and on TikTok and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a fun idea. And yeah, it was going really well. We thought we'd stay there. And then our landlord was like, hey, I'm selling the house.
Hey, we're tired of these bees.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
that's
Like the
what it was.
landlord's like, we're getting complaints about the bees, man.
Oh, it was when the real estate boom was just happening, and like he decided to sell, and they sold the house with a cash offer above asking price, knocked it down to build a bigger house. But at the time he told us, like, you basically have like 3 weeks to find somewhere else to live, and we could not for the life of us find anywhere in Houston. It was a madhouse with people clamoring for any available house, and my wife was like, this isn't what we want to do. Like, why don't you like pray about it and see if there's any jobs in agriculture out there that are in the vein of what you want to be doing. Maybe this is our chance to make a move. And I was like, that's crazy. I've been looking for a job for years. And so I just Googled it, like farm jobs or something like that. It was the first job that popped up was a job for Heifer International, which does international development work around agriculture. And it was a job in Arkansas, and applied for it, was underqualified for it, interviewed 3 times for it, and got it. And then they wanted us to move within 2 weeks. And we moved, immediately found a house, got settled in, and
So this is like mid-20s now?
This would have been
like
7
25?
years ago.
Yeah. Oh.
So late 20s.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, and made that kind of change into the organic farming section like really quickly. We just jumped on both feet. Worked with farmers. We worked with a cooperative of farmers. So being on the nonprofit, my job was to basically provide support, figure out what this group of 30 farmers needed, and be the Swiss Army knife in that position to figure out how to solve problems and coordinate production and get all this produce aggregated into the co-op and find places for it to be sold and stuff like that. And that was jumping right into like the deep water, but it was good. It was a hard but a good learning experience. And then I transitioned into still working with the farmers to do a training capacity, but to take a facility that Heifer had and turn it into a kind of hands-on example of what like a scaled farm could be for a organic vegetable farmer in Arkansas. Because there's, I think, 2.
And what's the context of that when you say scale farm? Are you talking like a micro farm, or are you talking like
100 acre?
Like
no. Even that is like far beyond where we're.
It's a micro farm type.
Yeah, like 5
gardeners.
acres.
Yeah,
5 acres. 5 acres is a large.
Yeah, that's a large
farm.
Micro farm.
Yeah. And so, so I was tasked with building that and worked on that space. And by the time I left, we were doing about 200,000 in organic vegetable sales just on 3 acres. And that was all wholesale market channels. And so that was a great learning experience of like what this could look like once it is scaled. And once I could kind of do that on my own, and really felt like for someone to help facilitate like the growth of the local food movement in Arkansas, we need someone that's in that space that's doing it at scale, for wholesale, organically, and not as a nonprofit. It's got to be someone's
Right,
enterprise. Otherwise, it's not replicable, and it doesn't give a model that other farmers could emulate. And so that's what we're moving towards now. Like, we want to be in that space. And so I wound up leaving Heifer in 2021. So like all the COVID stuff, and felt like that was a good time to start a business, during COVID and global supply shortages, that I'd go out on my own, but just jumped into it and started Mindful Farmer. We immediately started doing custom greenhouse design and construction and installation. And so that's basically what I did for the first year. And now we're adding on tools that I've developed during the course of working with all these farmers across Arkansas and the farm that I was managing, using tools from different companies that I was like, this could be better, or these two tools could easily be one tool, or the tool I need doesn't exist. I'm just going to make it. And so I kind of had a notebook going. And so then whenever we started Mindful Farmer and we're getting where we needed to be with greenhouses, I felt like it was the time to start adding the tools that I wished had existed. We would start adding that to what we offered. So now we're developing our tools. We have the drop seeder for the soil blocks and for the 10 by 20 trays, broad forks. We have a cultivator we're coming out with. And then now we're also seeing the need for amendments too, for both small scale farmers and for gardeners. There's just not a lot of sources of organic inputs. And Arkansas had one supplier who shut down last year. And so the handful of organic farms and CNG, or certified naturally grown farms, really didn't have anywhere to source from in the whole state. And so I've been trying to put together suppliers, regional suppliers, and now I'm being able to offer those things to the farmers. It's like that's the next thing we're adding. All the while, we're trying to lay the groundwork for the farm that we want to start here in the next few years.
Can you back up to one thing? Because I'm sure other
I know
people
that was a lot.
So I want to back up because I think a lot of people heard a buzzword in there, a phrase you said that everybody's like, wait a minute. So you said about 200K on 3 acres. So that was through Heifer. So how did that work? And can you explain just a little bit of what that looks like? I mean, so that was through Hefner received the revenues on that, or?
Yes. Yeah.
So you just started it. They basically kind of ran that operation for them on that?
Ran the operation for them. And so that was one of the tricky things is we wanted to be an example farm to where beginning farmers could come out and see what does that look like to scale? What does that look like to enter the wholesale market? But I had stipulations, like managing that farm, but still had to do many of the things a business owner would do. I did all the books and the accounting, but then also had to still do all my nonprofit duties of actually doing on-farm workshops and things like that, trainings, visiting farms. And then the other stipulation was I couldn't sell any product that another farmer had to a market that they sell to.
Oh.
So I had to figure out what were things that we could sell that were in demand that no one else was currently providing.
Wow.
And like that was what I had to like navigate around. But the challenge of that was like hard, but I loved it because I think that's what's going to help me succeed as a farmer. What is helping me succeed as a business owner is trying to find creative solutions.
That's the market part and the market gardener.
Yeah.
Well, and that's interesting that stipulation was put on you. Like, and I get it and I don't get it in that. Let's just talk about Paris for a minute. There's vendors that have the same crops over and over again. Mm-hmm. When I was there, and I think you might agree that certain clients go to certain vendors and vice versa. They've decided on where to go. Mm-hmm. And so to put such a limit of, hey, you can't, I mean, what could you not grow? Like tomatoes and like main things here? Is that what was happening?
Some of those things. So I kind of even joked that like I'm not a real farmer because I've never grown okra. I've never grown okra before. I've never grown.
You're not missing out on anything.
I know, right?
I know.
But like it's a common crop, but that was what everyone else already had. And so I was like, well, I'm just not going to do that. Or it was what a lot of the truck farmers had. And so I was like, well, then I need to do more specialty things. So we did rainbow carrots, daikon radishes, specialty type crops that we could pre-bag. And also I turned one of our there's an old horse barn that we turned into a commercial kitchen, and then I could do ready-to-eat lettuces, and then also our bagged root crops. And so that was something that no one else had, and no one else could take to the grocery store because they weren't compliant with FSMA, or they didn't have a commercial kitchen. And so that was an avenue I could be in a space I could be in that I wasn't competing with the farmers we were trying to train. And so that really helped. Heirloom tomatoes, and then just being organic. There's only 6.
So it could be the same crop variety, but you're presenting it in a way that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But that just goes to show, I mean, you were being extremely selective. I mean, 3 acres on that type of revenue. I mean, if you didn't have all those restrictions, probably could have at least doubled.
Yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
especially if you're going direct to consumer.
Right.
And so that was, but it was like that was the great part about learning in that
Right.
restrictive environment. Now, like as we move forward towards our own farm, those shackles are
Yeah.
off. We're gonna.
So what did that look like from a? Sorry.
And you also just said that this isn't a market where people are dropping off, and people weren't coming back year after year. Like every year that you were there, it seemed like there was less and less farmers around you.
Yeah.
To open up even more doors.
Yeah. There has been some new farms that have started in the past couple of years, but when I first moved to Arkansas, I feel like we were kind of a bit on the decline. Like we lost several farms that were in that co-op that aren't farming anymore, unfortunately. So there's tremendous potential for it. Part of it's meeting the consumer where they're at. Part of it's educating the consumer of how it's better. And so, yeah, I think there's some. There's like a new restaurant in our area that's open and is sourcing local. I think those kind of things start to kind of wake people up to, this food tastes better.
And you're fairly close to a pretty hot market from a culinary standpoint. I mean, Little Rock is really getting their stuff together as far as it's a great restaurant scene, it's a great nightlife scene. I mean, how far are you? 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, people are already driving to Little Rock to experience that. Might as well have it locally.
Yeah, and it's getting there. And what's also great is like, Texas is so big. Arkansas is pretty much 2.5 hours to any corner of the state, and we're right in the smack dab in the middle, which is another reason we want to pursue the wholesale options, because we can sell to Northwest Arkansas, which has a huge restaurant scene and a lot of money, and then also Memphis, and then Texarkana, Little Rock. Like if we can get to that space, there's a lot of untapped market. So that's our goal. But then also, for other farmers too, there's just so much growing demand and not a lot of people eating that supply. Part of it has been the inputs. Like you can't get inputs easily, or you got to drive to Missouri or Tennessee to get what you need to run your farm. Like that's another stumbling block or another hurdle. If we're getting started.
It's in the whole organic, certified naturally grown, all of these things that this, I won't call it niche because it's more than a niche now, but in the South it's a newer concept. You go to the more progressive parts of the country, and like this is the people are expecting that. Whereas now I always say like when we first started here, it was like we were bringing hippie food in because it was organic, naturally, what are microgreens, you don't deep fry stuff. And so that's a different challenge that, we have in the South too from bringing that in.
Even from some of the grocers that I was working with, I'd spoken with one grocer and they're basically like, we won't take your stuff because it is organic. It puts off our customers. I was like, wait, what? And I was like, what if I sell you my organic carrots? Because they were literally 3 miles from our farm, this grocery store. And I was like, what if I sold you our organic carrots, these beautiful rainbow carrots, at the same price you're paying for these plain orange ones that are coming from South America? And they're like, no, because it says organic, we're out. And I was like, that's interesting. And they said that their customer base would assume that because it says organic, it's just an added price, that it doesn't offer you anything. So some of that does come with learning and like educating the consumer of like, hey, this is a potentially more healthy way to eat, more nutrient dense. Like, and that's another thing too is even amongst organic, you can have organic food that has poor quality in terms of nutrient density, and so that's kind of a tricky one too. And I think what I found, at least in Arkansas, is that people really value transparency over everything.
Wow.
And so if you're local and you don't mind people seeing your farm and like seeing what you got in the chemical room, then that's what they feel good about and feel like you're offering a good product, or they see you're putting, soil health first. Then they know that plant's going to be more nutrient dense. And
what I've noticed is the same thing here. I mean, Paris is then on the northeast part of Texas, but still called the Deep South from a culture perspective. But we don't ever, I shouldn't say ever, we have more people concerned about where it's grown versus how it's grown.
Uh-huh.
So, we'd probably face the same thing if we approach a store organic. But if we put if we replace the term organic with local,
yeah,
I mean, that's the word that speaks, because everybody will come to us and say, where were these grown? I mean, I bet 3 dozen times a Saturday people ask, where was this grown for the new customers?
Yep.
And as soon as we tell them, they don't even care what it is. They're just like, oh, local grown tomatoes. That's what we want. We don't want these tomatoes that have been trucked in from down in the valley, South Texas or Florida, wherever it's come from. But
yeah, that definitely is a word that speaks louder in some communities. And that's probably like at that grocery store, I probably should have just taken off.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If you just put local on there, and
So I'm curious, the store that you were at, was it a regional store? Was it a national chain?
I believe it's a national chain. They're regionally owned. They have some sort of weird ownership model. Because what's interesting about them is they're franchise. Like one person can own a bunch of these different grocers, and they wanted you to deliver to every store. So that was also a challenge if you wanted to sell to a lot of the stores, but an advantage if you just wanted to sell to one. So they would otherwise have been a good partner for smaller farms because you could just deliver to that one local store. Other stores like Kroger, like they want you to deliver to a central hub, which for us is in Tennessee. So we had to truck everything to Tennessee to have it back hauled to Arkansas. Whole Foods wants you to deliver to just...
God dang, man, what a mess.
Yeah.
Whole Foods is wild too. You can deliver to any store, but then they back haul everything to the regional location in Austin and then back out to Arkansas. And so just because they always have trucks coming both ways every day.
The freshness then, I mean, that's just how.
Well, that's what's wild is like
I'd love to put a camera on a carrot or something.
I know.
From the time it gets harvested to the time it gets to the consumer.
And how many hands are touching it?
Yeah.
Because if it goes to the store, then it's going to get touched a couple times. It's going to get put on a truck. Mm-hmm. It's going to go to Austin, get unloaded, get moved around 3 or 4 times, get put back. I mean, how many hands are touching this?
Yeah.
Right.
That's wild. Yeah, the different stores in the region will place an order. You deliver to one store. That pallet or pallets will then go be distributed to each store and then put on those trucks. But I think the sales rep I was talking to, or the buyer, was like, it might be the same day that they're receiving that product again. So like if you delivered in the morning, it would make it to Austin by that afternoon and back to that same store.
Wow.
And this is supposedly a very progressive company.
Isn't that wild?
You know what I mean?
The logistics of that is nuts to me.
So what, can you share a little bit like what the revenue is? I mean,
don't get us sued.
Yeah, no, I was like, should I name names? But I didn't name the first one because I kind of had a negative interaction. But Kroger and Whole Foods were looking like good partners. I just left Heifer before we finalized those things.
So what's from just a percentage wise, like for anybody who's listening that is as curious as I am, but what is like the percentage from like a wholesale to direct to consumer? Like if you're selling that much, like is it 50% that you're selling it from a price perspective?
Oh, like
if you were to sell directly to a bunch of carrots to a consumer at a farmer's market for $4, what would you sell it to?
Most grocers have about a 50 to 30% margin depending on the crop.
Yeah, so it'd be $2 you'd sell basically. $2 to $2.50 maybe.
And I just assumed about a 50%. So if you buy carrots, if you buy local carrots in the store for $2 a pound, they bought them from the farmer for about $1 to $1.25.
Right.
Because every time that produce changes hands, the price gets cut in half.
Right.
And so if we sold to a distributor who then sold to a restaurant, the restaurant pays $2 a pound, the distributor charges $1 a pound, and then we get 50 cents a pound. And so it's like the fewest middlemen you can have in between, the more you're actually getting per pound. But then again, the more you have to move yourself and the less volume you do. It's like that's the trade-off.
Right.
As a small farmer, you're not getting the satisfaction of knowing who's enjoying and eating and buying, and what you're doing, every single customer of everybody that you've ever grown for. In your situation, 2 or 3 buyers to a client it's an item on their list that they're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
There's no difference between that and cereal and Drano when they're going to the store.
Well, it's a lower margin, so it's like less of a priority.
For sure.
Right. Yeah. Grocers can be tricky. Some restaurants, depending on the restaurant, can be a great partner and be like reliable. If they like, hey, we'll take 200 pounds of lettuce every single week of the year. Like that's the kind of reliable customer that like small farms need to be able to scale.
For sure.
But those guys can be hard to find. Those kind of restaurants.
We were talking earlier that the size of Conway, 65,000 versus you went to the market today, and we have a much bigger market here in 25,000 people, Paris, Texas.
Yeah, I was telling Nick, like y'all's market is impressive.
Right.
It is. But it's the vendors that did it. You know what I mean?
It is.
Yeah.
It's not the city. It's not anybody else. It's the vendors doing the work, showing up every Saturday, doing the work.
Teamwork. It really is. Teamwork
awesome.
is the big thing. All the vendors, with the support of the city, of course. But yeah.
Whatever.
And the community that supports. I mean, y'all would still be there.
Yeah, the community supports.
Yeah.
Maybe another podcast we'll talk about the hands being tied, but
yeah.
I'm not in anymore, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But it's at the end of the day, you guys have been the ones to bring it home.
Yeah.
So, and so the question becomes, if they're the ones bringing it home, there's a solid group of, I want to say about 8 solid people.
Yeah, 8 to 12. Mm-hmm.
And then you were talking about earlier, there's less farmers year over year where you're at. So, of course, the market's going to be smaller. So what has to happen for you locally in Conway for that to switch over?
Man, honestly, I haven't even considered the farmers market as an option for our farm.
And it's not for everybody, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important conversation to have because, man, it's a lot of damn work.
It is.
It's a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
And if your farm is set up for volume to go to a wholesaler, and that's the intent, it's not apples to apples.
Yeah.
And we should probably, after the point we're fixing to make, go into that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really depends, some of these farms, especially in the market gardening world, that are like, we're making $500,000 on an acre or something, something just astronomical. And you're just like, how? But then you look at the farmers markets they're selling, and they're selling it really high-end farmers markets.
Right.
Really.
Are you talking like New York and
New York,
California?
Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Montreal, Franklin, Tennessee, Nashville has some markets like that where it's like it's not uncommon to see $5 for a bunch of carrots, and you're like, whoa, $10 for a head of lettuce, and they can get it and they can sell out. And in Conway, that is never going to happen. If I put $5
really 65,000, because even Paris, like I sell a bunch of carrots, which is only, 10 ounces with the tops for $4.
Yeah,
that's and our lettuce is about $1 an ounce.
Yeah,
which is I think pretty good. For this area,
that's great.
Yeah,
and like whatever you can get. Like don't feel at all shy of like, oh, this is too much. If that's what people are paying and you're selling out, you could even.
Well, and it's like we were talking earlier. You're not selling to the whole town. If you have 100 regular clients that are willing to invest in you every single week, that's what you want. You're not. Right. You don't want 25,000 people buying from you.
Joe Salatin said, I probably said this before, but he said, I'd rather have 100 customers that spend 1,000 than 1,000 customers that spend 100.
Yeah.
One, your customers, and they're just the repeat. You can manage 100 customers. 1,000 customers are, it's kind of turns into a cattle versus pets.
Well, the thing about that 100 is they're there. They're there every single week.
Yep.
If you throw an event, they would show up. If you do a pop-up somewhere, they're there every single time.
Yeah, they're literally part of our farm family, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely like a good thing to invest in.
Yeah.
And as well as, the CSA model, I think, is also a strong model. A lot of technology's made that a bit easier.
Yeah.
As far as like customized boxes and delivery optimization. There's routes that'll, if you wanted to even deliver your produce boxes, I've seen farms that have partnered with places like DoorDash,
yeah,
and to deliver farm boxes to your customers. So there's great ways to use technology and leverage technology to do the direct to consumer route. Yeah. And I think that's really vital. Like if our ideal situation on our ideal farm was set up, it'd probably be about half wholesale and half direct to consumer. Direct consumer for the price, but also just for the value and life. Like you said, calling your customers a farm family is a very beautiful idea.
But you made the very important distinction of we're going to sell direct over here, and then we're going to sell wholesale over here, and it's not the same thing.
Yeah, even the crops that we grow would be really different, but ideally work in our crop rotation. And so we did a kind of experiment a bit with that at the farm that I manage. We basically had 3 kind of separate rotations depending on what crops we had. So things were kind of our highest margin, highest dollar items, heirloom tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, eggplants, ginger, herbs, lettuces were all grown in kind of our own rotation in high tunnels. And then things out in the field that we did more tractor cultivation or walk behind tractor cultivation were things like all of our root crops, winter squash, and those were the things that were mostly wholesaling. So like they took up space, but we could pull from those. We'd do 16,000 pounds of carrots a year, and put all those in crates, put them in the cooler, and all that was getting wholesaled for the next 6 months until the next round of carrots came in. So we had carrots year round, but then we had basically stockpiles of all this produce that we could pull and put into.
But think of the infrastructure that takes to pull that off.
Yeah.
Right.
It takes a lot of infrastructure. But then having that was like our reliable cash flow throughout the year. And then we had these kind of stockpiles of stored vegetables that we could pull into CSA boxes and do direct consumer. Or when we partnered with a co-op, we did a lot of the support for the CSA box that the co-op offered. And so it wound up being kind of a good marriage between the two, of having specialty things that get you a high dollar, but I wouldn't want to do a whole field of heirloom tomatoes because the labor force to pick that would be crazy. But I could still do my heirlooms and then do a field of carrots because I could use a machine to harvest those or something like that. Just like finding that balance.
So let me ask a question from like a newbie that would maybe listening. I mean, you've kind of got all this experience and kind of a vision, but like, where would you recommend somebody who's starting? I mean, is wholesale something that a new farmer could just jump into, or you think that it's still, very much like what we took, the path of just direct to consumer? I mean, can somebody just? I guess if you're brand new, you really can't because you don't know even how to grow. But,
if you got some growing under your belt and you're ready to get in and make some money, I think it is possible. I've actually started on like a short book called Small Scale Wholesale and want to crack that puzzle, solve that puzzle. I do think it's doable, especially on things like microgreens are one that people
all right, that's good.
Do a small a micro enterprise, if you will. It might be a side hustle and can start selling to grocery stores. We had another farmer that we knew that did sprouts, kind of that same vein. Lettuce, hydroponic lettuce. It's an enterprise. Even in your backyard, have a setup like that and just take to wholesale. And then we do cut flowers too. So in our backyard, we have 1,200 square feet. We just did everything in cut flowers. We partnered with Jill at Spring Willow Farm to do some overwintered flowers and her and Nathan's high tunnel. And so that was a small space, and flowers are super high yielding in terms of dollars per square foot. And that's how I'm thinking of everything is dollars per square foot to make a living. And so, there's 100 100-foot beds in an acre.
100
100-foot long beds in 1 acre.
How wide?
48-inch centers, 4-foot centers. There's 100.
So 30-inch bed with 18-inch walkway typical. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Then you'd have that's like kind of in the market garden style. You'd have 100 100-foot long beds. If you could gross $1,000 per bed per year, you have $100,000 per acre.
Right.
And so whenever I think of planting, like that's what I'm thinking. Those are the math I'm doing. 100-foot bed will fit 720 heads of lettuce. I can sell each one for $1. I'm already at $720 for that one bed with just one planting.
Right, which is maybe in the field for maybe a month?
A month.
Because you've got it in trays for a month.
Yep. So if you scale that down, there's 25 beds in a quarter acre. So if you could get a quarter acre and start doing head lettuce, even just seasonally, and do that wholesale to your local restaurants, maybe a grocery store if they're willing to partner, you could definitely start small and scale your way up for sure. For
me, the problem with that, even when we picked up our first restaurant customer, was the back pressure. One, it drove me to be able to succeed, to always meet their demand, but like to pick up a wholesale, that's what's always scared me about like approaching any of the stores in town. It's like that pressure of like, one, because I didn't have this background, grew up in a big ag, but to all of a sudden now have to be able to supply that now that they signed the the contract, it's like that stress. Just thinking about that is what like turns me away from that at this stage. We're 3 years in, so it's become more of a reality now. But still, it's
you've also not had to, because you've been able to get rid of everything that you've been growing to this point.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is we can hardly supply. Surprisingly, we can hardly keep up. I mean, we don't come home with much. We have, I don't know what we call these. We have these stores that we sell our produce at. Consignment stores. I don't know what the term is, but we've got three of them now.
I call them boutique grocers.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
that's exactly what you're at.
Local products and stuff, and
so they'll just take a percentage off, and they'll, you bring your supplies up there, and that works great, and there's very little pressure, which is why I like it. It's like whatever we got, we're putting up there,
and that's kind of our situation with. It's called Bell Urban Farm, and it's a boutique grocer, small scale grocer that only sources local. They're right in the middle of town, and Kim has surrounded her house with cut flowers, so she does a lot of mixed bouquets. And so we've formed a good partnership. Just, hey, when do your zinnias end? Okay, I'll have zinnias starting on that date. When do your tulips start? Okay, I'll put tulips in before that. And so we've just partnered with her to figure out how to keep all that together. And then so she buys wholesale from us, mixes our flowers into her flowers, and then has complete bouquets.
That's neat.
And so that boutique grocer kind of setup is also a great way to do wholesale, even if you're small, super small, 1,200 square feet in our backyard.
So could you, and Nick can cut this out if you want, but I got a question here on this. So on the flowers, wintering, because that's a Marvel concept, because we've got now 6 structures. 4 of them are heated. Yeah, 4 of them are heated. Nice. Like, what do you need to grow flowers? Because, like, we could even grow tomatoes, but there's just not enough sunlight, in the wintertime. So, like, what do you need for flowers? Like a zinnia is just, cut flowers.
Yeah, so you'd have to change your variety. So, like, overwintered varieties are going to be your best bet, especially in the South. A lot of our cut flowers don't do well with, like, early spring plantings. You more so have to overwinter them. So you'd be planting them in, like, September, October.
Mm-hmm.
They'd go through the winter and then start flowering February, March, April.
But are you, like, just keeping it just above freezing then?
Not at all. No heat at all. Down to single digits.
So what kind of flowers are tolerable of that?
Icelandic poppies. We grow a lot of Icelandic poppies. Okay. We force tulips. We do some of our tulips out in the tunnel, some of our tulips in the ground, and some of the tulips we've grown hydroponically indoors. Mm-hmm. And so we have tulips for
but then you've got that obviously heated up. It's
It's just in our sunroom. It's part of the house. There's Dara, Ami, Delphinium, Snapdragons, Orlea. There's a lot of different varieties that'll do well even in single digit temps in an unheated tunnel. A lot of them will even do well outside. Bachelor button can pretty much handle anything you throw at it. Snow, ice storms, it'll just thaw out and keep going. Icelandic poppies are another really great flower for us.
Huh.
Yeah. So we by doing that, you have flowers, 2 or 3 months ahead of everybody else.
It's kind of like tomatoes. I mean, if you can get them first to market, you've got,
Yeah. We had tulips for Valentine's Day. We were probably the first farm in Arkansas to have flowers, local flowers on Valentine's Day.
And that's just in your backyard.
Yeah. And so you can maximize that space. And then, of course, growing through the winter, that was another kind of like paradigm shift for me. Like as I started going from gardening to farming, was realizing like in most of the zones in the U.S., like 5 and below, like you can grow year round. Elliot Coleman is doing that up in Maine, coastal Maine. Jean Martin's doing it in Canada. And so with some supplemental heat, or even for most of the country without any additional heat, you can grow through the winter.
It's crazy.
So that was a shift for me because it allowed us to basically, one, I had to keep apprentices employed 40 hours a week, no more than 40 hours a week, every week of the year at the farm that I was managing. So they had to be just as busy in July picking tomatoes as they were in January. And so we're like, okay, we got to do the high tunnel thing. We've got to produce vegetables through the winter, or we need to harvest through the late fall and pack and package through the winter. And so that wound up being a good shift because we were able to keep our summers didn't kill us because we were shifting a lot of our production into the winter. Yeah. And so that was a big shift that wound up being really a healthy one.
Right.
To where we weren't just, dying in July, covered up in tomatoes and squash, and then wondering what to do in January. We stayed busy. It's good.
That's really neat. If this was a call-in, I think the phones would be ringing right now with questions.
I don't ever want to get to the point where we're having to deal with the phone.
I know. I do get
the phone rings enough around here without us interrupting a good time.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good info.
So, but it just goes to show there's so many different ways to do it.
There is. Yeah.
As you're talking about the rows and how much a row has to make, and if that row is supposed to do $1,000, and in one turn you can do $750, 2 turns you're set. But then if you have a beehive on 4 square feet, how much is that thing bringing in? And that's not even part of your rows. And how much like little stuff you can cram here and there, a couple of microgreen racks, a couple of herb, cut and come agains with net pots or something like that. There's just so much you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and even like I mentioned the okra thing, and really growing okra. Another farmer let their okra go. Came all these long, woody pods. Mm-hmm. They harvested those and then made wreaths with it in the winter time, and then sold those. So it was like they took what was otherwise a waste product at the end of the season, and then it was able to, sell that through the winter. I thought that was pretty smart. I've seen flower farmers just go and buy a whole Christmas tree and start chopping branches off and make their own wreaths with that. And so that also keeps your labor force busy through the winter and keeps income coming in. So there's so many creative ways to do that. And if you're local too, like if you're in the city, then there's a whole other component of kind of the agritourism where you could do pizza night. You could do, build a bouquet and cocktail night, or different things like that. And that adds a tremendous amount of value and revenue.
And from day one, the theme of this podcast is how do you incorporate creativity inside of your farm? And it's never going to go away. Mm-hmm. It's never not trendy to have a good time somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. The farm really becomes your canvas. I mean, I was just chatting with a friend of mine the other night. It's like, we could spend infinite amount of time working to get more money. But the reality is we're pretty content. But the moment that all of a sudden you throw yourself into a situation where, you take a leap of faith to go into maybe farming, you don't know what to do, but the creative wheels start turning, and all these things that you're mentioning, like, light bulbs just start going off, and like, there's no end, and eventually I think that's going to direct you into a niche, something that, like maybe for you it's tools, but you're still going to have the farm, right? You're not going to be able to likely have all of these areas be the primary revenue, but it's endless in terms of creativity.
Yeah. And finding something you enjoy doing too, where you don't get burnt out, because that is definitely a problem that a lot of farmers face. Is like, just hit the grind. I've been doing salad greens for 10 years and I'm just done.
Yeah. Well, or you're farming in August in Texas, and that's when every year I tell Nick, I think I'm done.
Yeah. It hits you.
It's just,
and then he builds another greenhouse.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's right. I know. I already prepare myself. August is coming.
Well, it's like, after all these years, you would think I would have every picture of lettuce that I would ever pot. I'm still taking pictures of lettuce.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks ago, I was off somewhere taking pictures of lettuce. And I'm like, but to farm it every single week, you do get a little bored, which does foster that creativity, which also means that in your case with the tools in particular, and we'll be getting to that here shortly, you're not just resting on the complacency of doing the day in and day out, and you're consistent with this, or you're consistent with the flowers, or, well, I know he's going to be here with those carrots, but you're coming up with other avenues, and you're just as sick as the rest of us in that you can't just sit around and do the same old. You got that busy mind.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the encouraging thing I would hope for you, and it took me forever to figure out, is how do you bundle up all that energy to do the few things that you can really excel at? Yes. And we were talking a lot today about, I think I truly became happy when I came here to Bootstrap, and people would think that's the opposite. Totally creative person. I was always into a bunch of stuff. I mean, I hate that you weren't here when I was doing stuff, but coming to Bootstrap, where now instead of running a landscaping crew and doing this and doing that, like, I only get to be creative here. Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry about the books anymore. I don't have to worry about the taxes anymore. But God bless everybody that does all this stuff that I had to do before that I wasn't great at and was probably shooting myself in the foot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just the ability to go, okay, how, and it's just not limited to media. It's what do we do with product development? How do we do a project here? How do we do things like this where, we're partnering up with you on the drop seeders? I mean, it's endless.
Yeah.
And so for you in your case, what I'm hoping happens in the next couple of years is you can really focus on the things that make you the happiest, make you the most money. Mm-hmm. And for me and for you, I feel I can impact way more farmers doing what I'm doing now than what I could do if I was still here just banging around Lamar County.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had to learn to say no a lot.
Oh, it's the best.
That's tough.
No, man.
It is.
I say no to everything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting there, but
I think, in America, people don't realize, like, the beauty of America is opportunity, right? Land of opportunity. But at the same time, that's a curse. I mean, especially if you're thought leaders and busybodies like we are, because everything is an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. But saying no sometimes is like the better thing to say. And I would think now that 45, I would be able to say that a little more, but that's good. That's some wisdom you got there. And
I'm working on it. My tendency is I want to do all the things, and I'll get asked, hey, can you serve on this board? Hey, can you partner with us on this?
So never serve on another board because you're just serving somebody else.
Yeah,
and half of the people are going to be pissed at you all the time.
Well, and I heard someone. She's a flower farmer up in Missouri, but she was just talking about how we're all going the same direction on the highway. We just have different lanes, and so not to get onto someone. Hey, you're not as passionate about this as I am. They probably have their own lane that they're going down. I was like, that's good, and that also helps me. Like, I don't need to try and solve all these other problems. Like, the work that I'm doing is important and it's helpful. I just need to keep doing it and do it well, and not get distracted by the side quests. So I'm learning that as a business owner. Right. Sometimes the hard way.
But you also have to go through it. I mean, it's just,
you do.
If you don't go through it, you'll always wonder, well, what if?
Yeah.
And it just comes in time,
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and learning what to say no to. I mean, all of that is just, that's part of it. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're young, because young in whatever you're doing. I'm not saying an age, but young in the new industry or adventure or whatever you're starting. It's like, you're going to say yes to anything, I mean, it's, hey, next week, could you bring, I remember, when we first started off, could you plant mustard greens for me? I'm like, sure, I'll do that. It's like now it's like, no, I just can't do that. Like, you're the only buyer.
Right.
So,
right.
But when you're young and you're eager, you do those things, but
and I don't think you lose the young mindset. Like, I'm more excited about Bootstrap now than I ever have been. Like, there's so much stuff going on. Like, we're in a good role. We're in a good place. We got the right people. And like, knowing what's coming down, like, I'm just buzzing with excitement. But at the same time, knowing that we have to get to that goal, I'm able to say no a lot quicker on stuff like hey, can we do it? Man, I can't. Like, I can't do anything else right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of more bodies or more hours or more assets. It's just like the project I was talking about earlier today. We're coming to the culmination of a 4-year end to this project that we've been working on. Like I'm not going to lose sight of that at the last marker.
Yeah.
I probably call you 2 or 3 times a year saying, hey, man, I would like y'all to do this for me. Like, I've got this great idea. And it's like, and you're like, yeah, well, it's a good idea. I'm paraphrasing, but like, that's not what we could do.
That's not what I said, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's the message. Like, yeah. And I totally get it. Same thing for us, though. Everybody has that, It's
dude, I got a call today, Michael Bell, that, I can't take on any more, like, I'm not going to lose $100 to go make $10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Love you, Michael, but geez. I'm busting his balls because I know he listens to this, but I've got to stay focused, and that's the thing. I think that's the thing I'm trying to say is with all this pent up energy that we have, it's staying focused on the North Stars that really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, there's so many people depending on what we do at Bootstrap to get the content out, to get the website up. My team's depending on each other. Like, this is not my baby. This is a group of us all going in the same spot. Mm-hmm. And you may get there with your clients. You may get there with your people that are buying the tools. It's just, I think that's what I love about it. There's just no one single way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, for sure. It's beautiful.
So we should probably talk about the tools. And then we'll end this podcast and immediately start the reason you're here. We'll talk about some soil blocks. And I wanted you here because you don't do soil blocks, and I think you'd have a lot of great questions. But, we already know from the experience that you had why you felt so drawn to come up with better tools. And I got to say, this drop seeder, you saw the drop seeder. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything can work as great as what you've come up with. And look, we wouldn't be here talking if I didn't think so. We talk about these distractions. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, I remember the day I saw the post.
Yeah.
And I immediately called, and we kind of circled the wagons, like, check this out. And he's right here, and he knows Jill. Like, it was all a bunch of stuff it's not just a great idea, but it's the right people, and it's our ability to quickly vet plus see you. I mean, it was just a perfect storm.
Yeah.
So, where did this skill set first manifest itself, and where are you at in the tool line?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, managing the farm, I was frustrated by not having the right tools. We had to be efficient because we had to make the most amount of money while training apprentices, not competing with people, and still doing all these other tasks. Like, I needed the right tools for the job. And we had a budget to buy tools. And then it was nothing more disappointing than buying an overpriced tool and then realizing, like, it's just going to sit on the tool rack. Mm-hmm. And so right away, I took a catalog from another tool company, and I just started making black marks through everything I thought was stupid. They're just like, this is pointless. Why you don't need that? Like, what are the if I made a list for the farmers that were coming to do a training at the farm of like the 20 things you need to start a farm, what would that list look like? And so that was kind of what inspired me to.
Some of these are $10 items. Imagine.
Yeah. So some of it's cheap, some of it's stuff you could get at a big box store, but some of it were things that didn't exist, or it was tools that really needed to overhaul to be more ergonomic.
And was any of these an app?
Was what?
An app. Were any of these tools an app?
I haven't made any apps, but no.
Pay attention, folks.
Yeah.
You don't need any more apps.
Yeah. There's an app for that.
There is an app for that. There's usually in the tech sector, there's probably already an app for whatever you need, and you can find it or modify it some way.
Well, then you need to have an app to figure out what kind of tool you need.
Yeah. The tools, I basically started this notebook of like 20 things that I think needed to exist in the world. And then started prototyping some things while I was still at Heifer. And then the timing was right for me to leave. It was just like, you know what, now I just need to go. And still, like, took that notebook with me and didn't do anything with it the first year other than to keep thinking about some stuff. And then year 2, started working with some designers and fabricators and made actual prototypes. Got boxes custom made. Everything we do happens within Faulkner County. So our home county in Central Arkansas, the boxes, the labels for the boxes, the metal fabrication, the drop seeder, are laser cut in my hometown, and then I assemble them personally by hand. So everything's happening as local as we possibly can. I've been really fortunate for the partners I've worked with. I'm working with larger companies, and they've been willing to make me 25 boxes or 100 boxes. Like, they've been really generous towards me as a small business owner to help me to scale. Like, they believe in what I'm doing, that I can grow the company.
It's pretty wild working with people outside of industry, isn't it? Because you wind up learning so much more that every partnership that we have, like, makes us so much better. And that's why I insist on going to places, is because inevitably we'll go and I'll see something from another industry that, what about this? And it allows us to ask questions that we never would have asked if it was over the phone, or we were just speculating, or if we were making assumptions about, how things work in the world. Man, it's so much more complex. And then a lot of times it's so much more simple than what you think. But it's having the right tools, having the right process in place.
Even for our broad forks, they're powder coated, and went to the powder coater to figure out how can we design the broad fork that helps you powder coat them more easily too.
How do you hang these things?
How do you hang them? It's a weird size. And so like that was kind of a problem that we had to solve along the way. And if we weren't able to go somewhere, or if that was outsourced somewhere, that'd make that so much harder. And then, I just love supporting our local businesses. So all these tools came about from necessity. The broad forks in particular, a lot of our apprentices were young women, and I noticed they struggled with the broad forks. They were either the lightweight ones with wooden handles, and the wooden handles would snap, the tines would bend sideways, or they were, and a lot of them just didn't have the body mass like I do to be able to jump on it, and it goes right down in there. The larger broad forks that were all steel were just too heavy. They require all this upper body shoulder strength and shoulder leverage that just wasn't working either. And so I invented the broad forks with a T handle for one of them. The other one has a single handle, and it allows more ergonomic grip, and they're lighter weight, but they're still all steel, so they'll never bend or break. And so, a lot of the things that I've wound up making, like the drop seeders, people they're looking at it and they're like, why has no one done that before?
It's with anything, and then that's again when we first saw your posts, magnets. I mean, it was brilliant.
Yeah. I sent even a set of those drop seeders to Elliot Coleman. Elliot Coleman's the godfather of organic farming up in Maine.
Elliot Coleman, right?
Yeah.
I thought they said L.A. Coleman.
Oh,
Elliot
Coleman.
All right, just make sure we're talking about the same person. Yeah.
And so sent him some to play around with, and he's like, these are genius.
Yeah.
I've been thinking
really
about
cool.
this for years, and like, you did it. And I was like, you don't know what that means.
Yeah,
to me.
no doubt.
He was the first book I got on gardening.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. And he's just like, it's just simple. Like, there's no moving parts. It's simple. It's not going to malfunction or break. And
the great thing about it is, and what I know is, it's just going to get better. Throughout the years. You're going to refine it, and even like it now as it stands is fantastic. The next year it's going to be better, and the next year after that you're going to get more efficient. Like it's like I see where Bootstrap has come and where we're at now, and the amount of stuff we've learned along the way, and I'm excited for you for that.
Yeah, I'm pumped. We got more tools that are right down the pipeline. I'm trying to not move too far ahead of myself.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, I want to have just the basic line of the drop seeders, the soil blockers, the broad forks, the cultivator, the inputs. 5 essentials that you need, whether you are a backyard gardener, a homesteader, or a small scale farmer, market gardener.
That's a good distinction that you brought up, because we spent a lot of time talking about this very thing today, is the resurgence of home gardening, and what can we do as manufacturers to facilitate that. And I think we haven't said it to this point, but the conclusion has been, give them something that can last for generations. It's not garbage anymore. This is U.S. based off of farming at scale. How do we take those lessons and put them in your backyard? And how much more enjoyable is it going to be? how much money are you going to save over the long term? Invest just a little bit more now.
Yeah.
And man, they're going to reap those benefits for years and years because they're not abusing it every day like homeboy over here.
Yeah.
Running into things.
Yeah, like
too soon.
That is and it's a hard argument to make, especially for beginners, because they want to be, price conscious. It's like, well, I'm just starting. I don't want to invest a ton of money. But then again, if you get something cheap, you have to replace the next year. You're already spending more money.
You pay for it.
You pay for it.
You do. I mean, it's called. I think somebody told me once. Actually, an old boss, and you're just kicking the can.
Yeah,
kick the can down the road. Eventually, you're gonna have to pay for it.
You'll still have to. You'll still eventually buy the better thing.
Yeah,
and you've spent money on the things that break, and so it's worth that investment. But there's so much noise on the internet. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, and there's a lot of competing voices, and a lot of times all saying really contradictory things. So I feel for the beginning gardener or farmer, farmsteader. Like,
what you never see? You never see a 5-year reunion of a PVC built hoop house.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Where's the follow-up
But you know
video?
what? Everybody is just like, I can do that. Yeah, but that's a perfect analogy and example. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a 1-year deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing. I mean, that's if you could somehow get that message out, of to buy the right tool the first time, because
hey, what do you think we're doing here?
Yeah, well, I know exactly, but like I've succumbed to a lot of those things. I remember this trellising tool. It was like $29, and it looked brilliant on the thing. They sent me the tape that actually does the thing, even though it said it was the tool and the tape. I'm like, I just spent $30 for the tape. I'm like, where's the tool? It doesn't, it's like there's so many of these false, misleading at best, I guess, scenarios, and you just don't know how to find what you're saying truth and all that.
Well, and it can be hard too to also like navigate what's essential. Like there's a tool that ties the string around a cord. I'm sure it's a great tool. But what I found is like I could move just as fast if I took an alligator clip, tied it to jute string, tossed it over, put a loop, and it was right. And I already had that in my office.
One of my favorite tools that's in my bag over there is a goddamn wiffle ball to chunk over the hoop house.
Yeah.
And the one time I forgot it out of Bonds, man, when we did the 30-footer.
Oh, that was great.
I left it. I was like, so I tied it to one of our splices, which is a 9-inch piece of 1.25-inch steel. That, of course, man, I missed and threw the damn thing right through the plastic that we just pulled over. I mean, it's like, and I've had the same wiffle ball forever, but I left it at the house.
Yeah.
Or the extension pole with the little 1-inch PVC cap to help get the plastic over. Like, into these, we're not selling it, because how many paint poles do you need? Well, everybody has a paint pole.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff you pick up along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
And how do you get the word out? Don't listen to us. Read our reviews. Listen to what people are saying on social. Read. Look at all the videos people have on us. I mean, there's, out of 100 videos, we're going to have half of a guy that's upset about something that we did. But it's, we're also humans. But and you're gonna face that, right? You're gonna sell drop seed, or somebody's not gonna like it because they're smarter than you. So but there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, if you're local though, people will have a little more reliability, more trust, in what you're doing, and you'll get more feedback and reviews. Like a lot of the stuff you see come across your TikTok or whatever your social media things for, that particular space is. You have no idea what this company is. It looks like a cool tool, so you buy it, but you don't know anybody who's actually used it. You don't know if it's valid.
Yeah.
I've succumbed to that too many times and bought, these tools, and they're
if only you had somebody to ask about it.
If only I did. I do now. I have a confidant in that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was affirming to me was a friend who I had known who was farming in Massachusetts, unbeknownst to me, had moved to Wisconsin and started working for another farm and sent me a picture, and the farm was using our drop seeders. And she's like, check this out. We hadn't spoken in like 2 years, but she recognized my name on the drop seeder. And I was like, man, cool. That makes me happy. So like, not only are they using it, but they're also training their new employees in using the drop seeder. I was like,
that's one of the more satisfying things about what I do. I mean, you can, but just imagining one day you write something down on paper and every couple of days or every few weeks, somebody's putting up a new high tunnel that you saw from paper to validating the vendor to setting it up in the warehouse to trialing out at your place and shooting the like all the stuff that you do to do R&D, and then somebody that you've never met before, it's not a friend, it's not a family, but they bought it based off the reputation of the company and everything that we've done to be who we are as a company.
Yeah.
And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And it's especially that's contributing to the whole like food movement that's happening.
Right.
Too.
And you can never take that for granted either. It's like they had 20 people that they could have bought a hoop house from, but they chose us for whatever reason, however they found us and whatever led them to, we're going to spend a little bit extra, or we're going to support USA, or we just like these people, or whatever it was. We don't take any of it for granted. And that's why it's so hard for us to, like, when we do stumble or when a carrier does mess up that's out of our control, but we're still responsible for it. Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard, but we have so many wins to carry us through those hard times.
Well, I know there's a great topic here, soil block, just in general, but I don't know if we want to go into that.
I do want to go into that.
Okay.
But we're going to have to do it on the next episode, so we might as well start that. So, Sean, thanks for coming out to Paris. The next episode, if you've ever been interested in soil blocks, we're going to get right into it whenever this comes out. But yeah, this is very much a 2-part series. If this podcast is out, that means we just uploaded the videos that we shot today, which I'm pumped about. It was a great day shooting with you. I mean, I learned a lot. I think you pretty much got me convinced that soil blocks are a very valuable component. I never did it. The reason I wanted you here is because you haven't done it yet, and I figure you're going to have a lot of great questions. So thanks for driving over here and putting up with our nonsense for a couple of days.
Yeah.
But,
it's good
all right,
you.
Everybody, thanks. Send us in some questions. We would love to answer them. I think this is becoming more of a regular thing with you and I. I'm liking it. So we will see you in the next episode.